Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke,
And I'm Emma.
and this week we are discussing Chapter 10 of Golden Fool, Resolutions. And the epigraph of this is a report from the end of the Red Ship War, and it was sent to Chade Fallstar. And it's talking about the fate of Kebble Rawbread and the Pale Woman, which is really interesting to me because from Fitz's point of view in the first trilogy, she was more of a fable. And
Yes.
Chade is getting reports that this person's actually real and like knows the leader's name and kind of getting, updates about that and had like a directive to say, hey, what happened to these leaders? So it's kind of interesting to note that in the actual planning of the war effort, they did know a lot more than Fitz. And it's good to keep
Yes.
that in mind.
Yeah.
But the fate is unknown, but presumed to be the same as all of the other red ships from the raiders that happened. So it says that they set sail in the last white ship for Jolakej with a crew of their most stalwart followers. They were not seen again, nor was any wreckage of the ship ever found. The assumption is that, like so many other out-island ships, the dragons overflew it, throwing the crew into a vacant-eyed stupor, and then destroyed it with the great wind and waves that their wings could stir. As the ship was heavily loaded with what translates from the out-islander tongue as dragonstone, it probably went down swiftly. It's also a little hint to what is coming as well. So, and a hint to what forging was.
Yes. And I do think that this is a really artfully done epigraph in front of the chapter, because this chapter we do see the lady mentioned by Elliania and her uncle and the servant, because there's a conversation that Fitz looks in on. And so to have this epigraph as a first time reader, it's something that you think about, but by the time you get to that part of the chapter, you're probably not really thinking about still.
Right.
But as a rereader, you can be like, oh my gosh, this is the connection. This is, I can't believe. So that's kind of fun. But I do also find it really interesting that the Out Islanders have a name for the skill stone that is closer related to dragons, because we do know that Elderlings used to make dragons out of this stone as sort of like a
an homage.
A sort of like respect to the dragons and also to put themselves into dragon form forever. So I think it's interesting to see the translation of the language of these two separate cultures that both interact with this stone, especially knowing that people from the duchies would have at one point known what this stone was and gone towards it. So the fact that they don't call it Dragonstone is cool. I don't know. I think it like adds more color to the cultures that we get to read about.
Yeah. Last episode and last chapter, Fitz was met with Dutiful in the tower, and they discussed Dutiful's problem and what he did during the gaming night and what was said and the insult. And so he is leaving the skill tower, Verity's tower, to go back down to his regular life, thinking about these problems and wondering what is going to happen, like what Chade and the Queen are going to do to fix it, basically.
Yes, he's not envying them their position that they have to figure out what to do.
Yes. So after that, he went to Lord Chade's room, and then they discussed multiple things, including him taking on Thick as a student. So now Fitz is kind of dwelling on that. It's like, okay, this is more that I have to take on here, and I'd be lucky if Thick didn't kill me when I attempted to teach him. But there was a worse shadow to it. Chade had tempted me well, as only one who knew me so deeply could. Nettle here at Buckkeep, where I could see her daily and watch her blossom into womanhood, and perhaps chart her an easier life than the one Beric and Molly could give her. I tried to tear that idea from my mind. It was a selfish yearning. And it it is a selfish yearning, but also you're not giving your child the best opportunity because you think it's too selfish.
Yeah.
It's a little, a little contradictory, and we've already discussed kind of that whole issue that we have with it in the
Yeah.
previous episode, but
I also kind of find it odd that this would be the first time Fitz has ever thought about the fact that he could give Nettle a better life. Like, surely he doesn't believe that is true, and that's why he's continuously keeping her away from Buck. And so I don't know, it just feels like a weird thing to have immediately decided that there's no positives from letting Nettle go to Buck, but then Chade points out to him, like, hey, she could have a way better life. And he's
right.
like, oh, that is tempting. I don't know. I guess, like, that part, why would that sway him at this point? He already has decided that that's not, like, her safety and well being isn't tempting. It's just maybe she could have a better life that's odd to me, but that's just a personal nitpick thing. I don't know.
As you said, he stops at one of those little spy holes and looks in on the Narcheska's chambers just to see what's going on, and is in luck because they're both in. And so he settles down to spy on a little scene that they're having.
Yes, it is good to mention that he does hesitate before spying on them. That he's said, I stood a time beside the spy post hesitating. It would be the first time I had deliberately come to spy and listen, which is crazy because the first time he accidentally spied and listened to the Narcheska, he learned a lot.
Right.
And it seemed like something was going on there. And then he just never followed that thread. I get that he's very busy and that there's a lot going on, but he didn't even try to look in any other time before now. That's insane because this does concern
He's
the
not
prince.
as nosy as you are.
No, but he is because he spent all this time watching Civil do nothing.
That's because of his history with Civil and the Piebalds, I think, and also the direct danger that they already posed to the prince.
That's fair.
And he is well aware that Chade and Kettricken are both focused on the Narcheska and assumes probably that they can deal with it.
I guess. I don't know. I just was like, for real, you saw something weird and you're like, I don't need to ever spy again. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, he is spying now. And like you said, he's in luck because they are in the room and they're eating breakfast. So he gets to hear a conversation directly related to his other worry, which is about what Dutiful's going to have to do now that he has slighted the Narcheska by saying that she isn't a real adult, basically.
Right. And Peter is saying that, no, Elliania, as a fish on a line, you must first set the hook before you can play him. Flaunt your displeasure with him now, and he will avoid that bitter taste to follow instead the bright feathers and sweet egg of someone else's lure. You cannot show him what you feel, Ellie. Set aside the insult, behave as if you did not notice it. And Elliania is obviously saying, like, I can't do that anymore. I've done as much as I can. It was as much as I could to restrain myself last night when I heard it the first time. I could not show him what I truly feel about him with less than a knife's edge, uncle. Ah, how well that would benefit your mother and little sister. He spoke the words quietly, but Elliania's face grew very still, as if he spoke of death and disease in the next chamber. She tucked her proud little chin, bowing her head before him with lowered lashes. I sensed the strength of will she used to rein herself in, and suddenly saw the changes that her months at Buckkeep had wrought in her. Peter might call her his little fish still, but this was a different girl from the one I had first spied on. The last vestiges of child had been hammered from her by the pounding of Buckkeep society. She spoke now with a woman's determination. I will do what I must, uncle, for our mother's house. You know that. Whatever I must to hook this fish. Before we move on to what they're talking and insinuating right there, let's just talk about Elliania a little bit and how she is kind of settling into this, and also the hints of what is actually happening behind the scenes, because Peter directly mentions, your mother and the women of our house are kind of relying on you in some way.
Yes.
And Elliania is obviously abashed by that and being like, okay, I will buckle down. I will do this then, even though I did not want to. And Fitz should pick up on that a little bit, even if he should not know the exact context. He should
Mm-hmm.
know, like, okay, there is something that is riding on Eliania's union with him, even though they say that they don't want, she doesn't want to marry or have a kid or anything like that from the
Right.
first time he spied on them. So something should be a little bit off in that dissonance there.
Yeah, I've been really struggling, I think, this book in particular with Fitz and his sort of back and forthness, I guess. He seems to go from one extreme to the other. He either notices everything or he notices nothing, or he digs into something because it seems suspicious, but only digs into the one thing and doesn't continue looking for other suspicious things. Like, I feel like there's a lot of mistakes that he's making. And it was really sort of frustrating to me because I feel like also every other chapter he flip flops on being angry at people or being like self-loathing or a mix of both. Like, it just feels like there's a lot of tumultuousness inside of Fitz and his attitude and what's going on. And I was getting frustrated, especially because we are doing these deep dives where we have to like really look into how he's acting chapter by chapter.
Right.
And then I had to take a step back and remind myself something that we haven't really been talking about, which is that Fitz is still grieving Night Eyes. Like, we have touched on that, but I don't think we touch on that as much after the original thought.
It's been what, like maybe 3 months?
Yes.
4
like
months?
And Night Eye, it's not just the loss of like a loved one or a family member. This is a loss of part of himself.
Yeah, and his senses and how he relied on those kind of extra things.
And so I probably still will get frustrated this chapter as well, but I think it is really important to note that like there's not anybody that Fitz trusts enough to go over all the details of this stuff with the way that he would have with Night Eyes. Like, I do feel like Night Eyes sharing a space in Fitz's mind in this moment would have been his second set of eyes to say, hey, that's weird.
Yeah.
Or like Fitz could have talked out what he heard and then realized that things were weird because he's talking it out with Night Eyes, even if Night Eyes doesn't get social and human etiquette stuff. So I do think that part of this weirdness in his attitude, the flippy floppy, the like missing a ton of stuff, I do think can be attributed to the fact that he is reeling after the loss of a part of himself.
Definitely.
That being said, it is really annoying that he doesn't pick up on that at all. Like, it is, he notes that it seems as though after Peter saying like, oh, that would do well. If you fail, that would do well for your mother and sister. He notes that the way Elliania reacts is as if that is a threat.
As if death and disease in the next chamber.
Yes, but then he continues on. And I guess also maybe this is because it's a different language. I mean, presumably they're speaking
No, remember the first time Peter is insisting to speak in the farmer's tongue because she must practice. So I'm assuming they're continuing to do that.
Yeah, but I guess what I meant, sorry, is that like this is a different language to them.
Oh, okay.
So maybe
it's their second language, sure.
Yeah, maybe there's context. He's thinking there's context missing or something.
Yeah.
And with a matriarchal society, disappointing her mother would be really bad. And
right.
Maybe that's why. But come on, not even a second thought. It never comes up again.
But Elliania says, whatever I must do to hook this fish, I will. And they're implying that she uses her body or seduces the prince here. And Peter says, no, not yet. Not that. Not at all, I hope. But you cannot show him your anger. You must appear untroubled by his insults, smile upon him, behave as if it never happened. She must do more than that. I could not see who spoke, but I recognized the serving maid's voice. This is Henja. She walked into view. I studied her more closely than I had previously. She appeared to be about my age, dressed simply as if she were a servant, yet she bore herself as if she were in charge. Her hair and eyes were black, her cheeks wide and nose small. She shook her head at both of them. She must appear humble and willing. She paused, and I saw the muscles of Peter's face bunch as he clenched his jaws. It made the woman smile. She went on with evident relish. And you must make him think it is possible that you will yield yourself to him. Then she spoke in a deeper voice. Bring the farmer prince to heel, Elliania, and keep him there. He must not look at another. He must not even consider another one as someone to bed before he is wed. He must be yours alone. Somehow you must claim him heart and flesh. You have heard the lady's warning. If you fail in this, if he strays and gets a child with anyone, you and yours are all doomed. So that is really interesting as well for first-time readers and rereaders because it kind of reiterates that the lady is all against the Farseer line continuing.
Yes.
Right? This is it is a directive to the Narwhal clan to, hey, you have to marry the prince, and then we'll deal with it from there because then you're in our control.
Right.
He cannot have a child with anybody else. Like, we need his line under our control.
Right. And I do wonder if they want him to not be able to produce an heir at all, even if he were to get with Elliania, or if they want access to whoever his child would be with Elliania. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But I do know that this is very contradictory to what the Fool is trying to do, because Beloved does talk about how without the Farseer lines, the line dragons never come back. Like, this is the last step before dragons go extinct permanently, I guess, is the Farseer line somehow. And so I wonder if this is a reaction to that, because as much as we don't know exactly the inner workings of the White Prophets, we do know that Clarice has chosen the pale woman. I forget her name, but
Illustor.
Illustor, thank you. They have chosen Illustor, and she has just as much access to future predictions as Beloved did.
Yeah.
Which Beloved has more, arguably Beloved has more because he is a prophet and can see the future and can more actively see it. However,
to me, it's not clear if she also has visions, though.
Yeah.
And it feels like she does.
Yeah. But I was also going to say, even if she doesn't, he did put a lot of his visions in writing for the
Yes.
Clarice Library.
Correct.
So she would have been able to see the true visions of the real prophet. But maybe she does also have visions. It's unclear, because there's not really supposed to be more than one, supposedly, in a generation.
Right.
And maybe that's also not true. That's just like a rumor.
Well, that I think would be true. I mean, it's probably kind of part of the mythos of it, right? But I think it kind of is true, except that the servants are doing their breeding program.
That's fair.
And so they are creating more talents than would have originally been around naturally. Because they're forcing these people with white ancestors to interbreed.
That's fair. I don't know. Either way, that I just found it really interesting to see that she is actively pushing against a Farseer heir coming through, which does, though, imply that she doesn't see as much or everything because she doesn't know about Nettle.
Right.
In this moment, at least.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know that there already is a secondary way to continue the Farseer line, as far as we are aware. So yeah, just interesting little tidbits to pick up. But again, Fitz is not... He doesn't take this as seriously as I want him to. He doesn't like...
It's hard to say whether he's taking it seriously or not. I want to say, first of all, before you continue on that line, because he's just relaying everything verbatim, and there is nothing of his thoughts in this whole scene.
That's true.
Until the end, right? So...
Although I will say, at the end of watching this happen, there is an opportunity for him to miss the riding party and go after or follow
to follow Henja.
Yeah, to follow Henja, and he chooses not to do that, which I think is a big oversight. But whatever. I guess you're right. This is just sort of a reporting situation, not necessarily a lot on how Fitz is feeling about things or what he's thinking about what he's seeing.
He definitely places more importance on the prince's well-being and that, like the riding party and things like that, and his ability and Chade's ability to deal with whatever this is. Like, he'll report this information to Chade, but he'll let Chade take care of it.
That's fair. And I guess if you think about it, Fitz isn't necessarily a person, this is going to sound harsh, but he's not necessarily a person to go out of his way to help people he doesn't know. And I don't mean that negatively. I don't mean that like he's a cold or callous person. I think he just doesn't typically try to help human beings out that aren't directly related to him, especially if he doesn't fully trust them. So like, even though he's hearing that Elliania might be in trouble and something weird is happening to her, he doesn't really care because he doesn't care about Elliania in the nicest way.
Right. He was fully trained to take that information and help the Farseer family.
Yes. So he can't tell how bad things are, and so there's not really a reason for him to feel like he needs to act, it feels like. Right. I don't know. He's just... And I feel like that makes it sound like he's a bad person or something. I just don't think that he has capacity outside of his own family and friends. And if this was an animal crying for help, he would without hesitation help. But for some reason, human beings, they're just too complicated, and he doesn't want to think about getting involved in things he doesn't have to.
Elliania bursts out like, I cannot do that, and continues on saying, like, I've tried all of these things. I've tried dancing with him. I've tried conversing with him. He thinks I'm a little child, so like it's useless. He disdains me as a child, an offering from my father simply for the making of a treaty. You hear her, Henja? She has already tried your disgusting little tactic. He does not want her. He is a boy with no fire in his blood. I do not know what more we can do. Eliana sits up straight and all of a sudden says, I do. Her chin had come up again, as had the fire in her black eyes. He shook his head at her. Elliania, I am not a child, nor a mere girl. I have not been a girl since this duty was laid upon me, uncle. You cannot treat me as a child and expect others to see me as a woman. You cannot dress me like a doll and bid me be sweet and tractable as some doting auntie's little treasure and expect me to attract the prince. He has been raised in this court, among all these females as sweet as spoiling fish. If I am but one more of them, he will not even see me. Let me do what I must, for we both know that if I continue as I have, we will fail. So, let me try it my way. If I fail on that path also, what will we have lost? And so Peter stares at her for a while, and after a little bit says, what do you propose, child? With like dread in his voice. And Elliania says, like, no, not what you're thinking, and not what you previously proposed or what Henja was proposing at all. No. This woman, speaking of herself, proposes that you tell him my age. Today, in his farmer's years, rather than my god's rune's years. And that, for this day at least, you let me dress and behave as one of the daughters of our mother's house would, insulted as he has insulted me, to prefer another woman's beauty to my own and announce it to all. Let me bring him to heel as you have commanded, not with cloying sweets, but with a whip, as a dog such as he deserves. Elliania, no, I forbid it. The serving woman spoke with a snap of command. But Peter speaks out and yells at her, saying, Get out. Get out of my sight or you will be dead. I swear it, lady. If she doesn't leave now, I kill your servant. Henja leaves, saying you'll regret this. But that's also important because lady is capitalized there, and he speaks to Henja as a woman, lowercase.
Yes.
So rereading, obviously, two different people he's speaking to. First time through, I still don't think I truly caught on to what was going on with this.
I didn't think about skill being... I might have, like, briefly wondered about, like, is there skilling? But I didn't know of any women that had been known to skill that were like big bads, if that makes sense, in the
Right.
last
Yeah.
book, that would take it upon themselves to do this. So I was like, this must be a new person if they're skilling, but it's probably not skill. And I think I also toyed with the same thought that I think Fitz has later, or maybe it's just my own thought that I have been transposing onto what I think Fitz believed. And that is that there was another person in the room with them and that she just didn't speak out loud.
Yeah.
That she's just ordering the servant around. And I think that's what Fitz thinks is happening for a while. I think I agreed with it for a little bit, and then it became too obvious that that can't be,
Right.
there has to be something else. But I think that was my thought on the first time, is like, oh, there must have been another person that we can't see.
It's quite easy to breeze past this line, though. And when Henja leaves, Peter's like, she can't command you, but I forbid it. And Elliania then levelly just says, do you? And Fitz knows that she wins that, basically.
Yeah.
And then there's a knock, and Arkin Bloodblade, her father, comes in, and Elliania excuses herself right away to go get dressed and everything. So Peter and Arkin are talking a little bit, and Fitz notices his eyes are lingering on the door while Elliania has vanished. So there's kind of something going on that Fitz is like, okay, this is a little bit off. Don't know what's going on. Not really going to pursue it. It's not my business. He emerges into his own cell, sees that Lord Golden's alone, and then approaches Lord Golden.
Right. And also, just in case anybody was curious, the reason that Eliania's father had come in was to discuss things about trading that were going wrong, or the status of different imports and exports. So he doesn't just like show up to show up, and this isn't also directed by the lady as far as we can tell. This is just good/poor timing on his part, where he comes in and has stuff to talk to Peter about that's about business. So that's just, I think, important to know.
Fitz walks into Lord Golden's room, and Lord Golden looks him over and assesses him, obviously, and says, "Sit down, Fitz. I'll not wish you a good morning, for it's plainly too late for that. Care to share what has overshadowed you with gloom?" And I think that's interesting because we know Beloved is very sensitive to Fitz's moods and who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Fitz is still saying this is Lord Golden calls him by his name, not Tom Badgerlock.
Yes.
But Fitz says it's useless to lie, and so he kind of tells the whole social stumble that Dutiful had.
So interestingly, yeah, he does say, like you said, useless to lie, and then tells the Dutiful story, but then doesn't tell anything else, really.
Yeah, he says, "Of Nettle I said nothing. Did I fear he would concur with Chade? I am not sure. I only knew that I wished to keep it to myself. Nor did I speak of what I had seen through my peephole. I needed time to sort it out before I shared it with anyone."
So yeah, I think that's really important, because it's interesting to me that he doesn't see that as lying, which
omission, right?
Yeah, there's a line, and I think he's treading it. I would personally, if I was Beloved, feel as though he was omitting things, which is lying by omission. Wouldn't love that. But Fitz feels like he's being truthful to Beloved, and we know that Beloved is, now that Night Eyes is gone, the person that he trusts most in the entire world. And even with that, he's not being fully open and honest,
right?
Which is kind of crazy. I don't know. It's really sad. I don't know. He can't even be open and honest with his friend who cares about him.
Yeah.
And
he's done that before, though. Just like, I need to think this over before I share information with anybody.
And I'm not saying he should absolutely tell every little tidbit to every little thing to Beloved or anybody, but I feel like he does need to open up. Like, it's his, especially the Nettle stuff. You can't talk about that with Beloved.
Right.
I don't know. It's just silly to me, but also frustrating, because we know that if Fitz would be more open about Elliania and what he's seeing now, that could be way more helpful to Beloved.
Right.
And also solve a lot of their problems later on.
Well, Lord Golden says that he had preferred to listen to a new Out Islander minstrel rather than go to the gaming tables, but he had heard the tale. before he went to bed and asks if Fitz would like to go along on the ride because he was also invited. When Fitz says yes, the fool smiles, and then Lord Golden pats his lips with his napkins and says, "Dear, dear, this is most unfortunate social stumble. The gossip will be delectable. I wonder how the Queen and her counselor will manage to juggle it back into balance." There were no easy answers to that. I knew he would use the turmoil stirred by this to dig into where loyalties truly lay. Between us, we cleared the kitchen platters of food. I took them down to the kitchen, where I lingered briefly. Yes, the servants were already gossiping of it, and speculating that there was more between Lady Vance and the prince than a mere game of stones. There's already rumors that people have seen them walking alone together and things like that. So Fitz is growing more disheartened because there's also a rumor that Duke Shemshi approves of the match and doesn't see any obstacle to the match for the future. So, and Fitz knows that he's powerful.
Right.
So it's like, this is not good for
right.
diplomacy.
And also, it's bad that he's not seeing an obstacle when Dutiful is already publicly betrothed to somebody else. Like, this could be the work of Shemshi not wanting to back the Out Islanders, right? This could be a deeper political thing. Right. It's frustrating because it's not clear how much into this Lady Vance is. Like, is she part of this plot? Is this her uncle doing this? What's going on?
It's also not clear if any of this is true because it starts with a rumor of Dutiful and Lady Vance walking together hand in hand alone in a garden at night, which
a few evenings ago.
Yeah, which is also not true.
Right.
So we're not sure. But Fitz, either way, knows that servants gossip a lot, and sometimes there are truths in there. So
yes. So that is the worry there, is that some of it, especially the more worrying aspects, are the parts that are truth.
Mm-hmm. One other thing I saw while I was there that caused me suspicion. The Narcheska's maid, whom I had last seen quarreling with Peter, hurried past the doors of the kitchen and out into the courtyard. She was dressed warmly in a heavy cloak and boots, as if for a long walk on this cold day. I supposed it was possible that her mistress had sent her off on some task into Buckkeep Town, but she carried no market basket, nor did she seem the type of serving woman who would be chosen for such an errand. It both puzzled and concerned me. If I had not all but promised the prince that I would be there for his ride, I would have shadowed her. Instead, I hurried up the stairs to dress for the morning ride.
That's a crazy rewriting of history. He literally told the prince, "You can ask, but I'm not promising I'll go."
And then when Lord Golden asked, he said he would go. So I think in Fitz's mind, he's like, "Oh, I made up my mind. I'm going to go."
I guess. But still, I promised the prince. No. Or I all but promised the prince. No, you literally told him, I'm probably not going.
He said, "I'll think about it."
Mm-hmm. But also, I believe that she's going to meet with the Piebalds.
Yes, yeah, I think so too.
And so it's really annoying that he doesn't follow her here, because this would solve a lot of issues in one fell swoop if he would just go. Also, question though, now that I'm thinking through, if Fitz were to take Henja, catch Henja, sort of like put her in jail or whatever, and something happened to her, do you think the Narcheska's family would then be harmed as a retaliation, even though the Narcheska didn't work with Fitz to do any of this?
Yes. And that's why I think the Narcheska and Peter and Ark and Bloodblade would be doing everything within their power to free Henja.
Okay. Interesting.
Because they're kind of like in a delicate position.
That's fair. Because I was going to say, I mean, like, what could the Pale Lady really do? But I guess she would hurt people that are innocent. So not great. She could do a lot of damage. Although not to the Farseer line. So here I am being Fitz about it. So Fitz decides not to follow Henja because it's not suspicious enough yet. And he already promised the prince. So he goes back to Lord Golden's chamber, where he is met with a nasty surprise. And that is that Lord Golden has set out an outfit for him to wear that isn't what he's currently wearing.
Yep. Apparently, a lot of the young lords around Buckkeep are starting to have their own servant bodyguards in a
Mm,
pale imitation of what Lord Golden and Tom Batchelor are. And so Lord Golden has to show everybody else what it truly is to be the original. And
yes.
so it is very, very well made new clothes that are buck blue for servants, but also warm and extremely tailored, has a bunch of little pockets in it, and if you stretch your arms, bands of like other colors come out. So it's
Yeah, it's sort
yeah.
of making sure that Fitz is also up on the fashion, which Fitz sort of starts by a little bit making fun of how ridiculous the fool is dressing and how he doubts that that's how Jamalians actually dress because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then he realizes that he will also have to dress like that. And he's annoyed. And he's even annoyed at the fact that there are little pockets in his clothes because even though he approves of the pockets, he winced at Lord Golden instructing the tailor to add them. I'd rather that no one else had known of my need for concealed pockets. As if he sensed my concern, Lord Golden spoke from the other room. You will note that I had Scrandon add pockets to permit you to carry a number of small but necessary items for me, such as my smelling salts, my digestive herbs, my grooming aids, and my extra kerchiefs. I gave him most precise measurements for those. Yes, my lord, I responded gravely, and then proceeded to fill the pockets with his own needs.
Yeah.
And
Which is a great, great little detail of Lord Golden foreseeing this issue.
yes, but it does make me wonder, first of all, why Fitz would automatically assume that Lord Golden of all people would slip and do something without thinking at all that could potentially jeopardize him. It's kind of crazy to believe that of Beloved. I don't because
Fitz
Beloved
doesn't really take anything at face value though. Like, right? That requires an implicit trust, which he has for big things. But like small details like this, I feel like he's still Chade's boy, Like all the less people that know a secret, the
that's
better.
fair.
If there's any way this could have possibly gotten out that somebody else needed small pockets, like that's really bad.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. But I don't know. I was a little sad at that. But also, for like the third time this chapter, Beloved notices something that Fitz is feeling inside that he has not expressed and addresses it before Fitz even says anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And this has been growing, I feel like, throughout the last couple chapters where Beloved seems to be more connected to Fitz. Like their bond is somehow more sensitive on Fool's side in a weird way.
Kind of like we
It's
talked about and somebody wrote in, Fool doesn't have his own skill. So when you have that connection in somebody else's feelings, that's probably very foreign and like you're very aware of that extra thing.
yeah,
Fitz has so much noise in his own brain, his own skill, and that link is so tenuous that it just doesn't even register.
that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. So I thought that was really interesting and something I want to continue to keep an eye on as the books go forward
Yeah.
because I feel like it has been steadily growing. In this chapter, it seems super obvious to the fact where I'm frustrated that I didn't catch it before now to be like, oh yes, and here it
Right.
is building up to its peak. Um, but better late than never, I guess.
Mhm.
But yeah, so they have the weird thing with the fool predicting, and maybe it's not anything related to the skill. Maybe it's just knowing Fitz well enough to know he'd be worried about that
Yeah.
after he's seen it. And so pre answering the question, I don't know.
When I lifted the winter cloak, it revealed the final addition to my garb. The guard of the blade and the scabbard were so gaudily adorned that I winced. But when I drew the blade, it whispered death as it came free from the sheath and balanced like a bird on my fingers. I sighed and looked up to find the fool standing framed in my door. The look on my face well pleased him. He grinned at my astonishment. I shook my head. My skill doesn't deserve a blade like this. You deserve to be able to carry Verity's sword openly. That one is a pale compensation. It was too large a thing to offer thanks for. He watched me buckle the sword belt and seemed to take as much pleasure in that as I did to wear it. So now he has a very, very, very well made sword rather than just kind of like the serviceable one.
Yes.
And it is very gaudy as well, which I think I feel like he can't take it anywhere because it is so gaudy.
Right?
Like he talks about that in the future. It's like, well, I'm going on this trip to kind of as Levjal because
Yeah.
the king has, pressed me into my service or whatever, and I'm leaving Lord Golden's service, and that's like the excuse. I can't have like a super gaudy bejeweled sword.
Yeah. But as of right now, I think he's just excited to have an excuse to get a nice sword.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. They gather down below, and it's bigger than Fitz anticipated. There's a lot of people waiting. A few young nobles already awaited. Dutiful Civil Brisinga was there, deep in conversation with Lady Vance. Did she look displeased as she gestured at the waiting horses, a far larger party than she had obviously wagered on? Two other young women, her close friends by how they stood, commiserated with her. They all greeted Lord Golden warmly as he joined them. It struck me that he looked but a few years older than they, a handsome, wealthy, and exotic foreign nobleman in his early 20s. All the women drew closer to him, talking, while three young noblemen, one of them a Shemshi kinsman from his strong resemblance to the Duke, also lingered nearby. Lady Vance was obviously already in the center of her own tiny court. If she did manage to win the prince, these newly loyal courtiers would rise with her. Small little paragraph just kind of showing the ebbs and flows of court life, which is interesting, but also a good description and reminder that Lord Golden looks like he's in his early 20s.
Which is crazy, because we know that he's older than Fitz by at least a decade, if not
it's
double.
At least 17, but probably much more.
Yeah.
So he's at least 50-something here.
He looks like he's early 20s.
And he's probably closer to like 70.
Goals.
70 or 80, I would guess. But.
He is very young looking, but also I think this is a good descriptor not only for the ebbs and flows of court life, but also because I think it points to the fact that Lady Vance isn't some innocent young lady who doesn't know what she's doing. She's not just not like other girls. She is also amassing power at court and trying to vie. Right. This didn't happen overnight. This little group didn't form just because last night happened. This is too much to have happened like that. So I feel like it's a good peek at also the fact that even though Dutiful thinks she's just a girl who doesn't act like other girls.
She's a couple years older as well, right?
Yeah.
So she's like 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm. And she is clearly thinking it through. This is not a rushed sort of situation. But then Fitz goes on to talk about how he then focuses on the horses that are around, because while he can't look at the nobles or like stare at nobles for very long, he can look at their horses and kind of guess at who's here and what's going on. And one of the things he notes is that Civil's horse does have the hunting cat cage thing
perch.
on the perch on it on the saddle, but the cat is not present. And he's talking about how he doesn't believe that Civil came here without his hunting cat. He thinks it's just not being held at Buck because, as he says, no witted one would willingly be parted from his partner that long.
Willingly is the key word, Fitz.
Yes, and I literally was like, follow that thread. Like, But
he assumes that the cat is roaming the hills and Civil must meet up with the cat once in a while and wants to spy on that meeting at some point.
Yes, he would love to. And then he thinks that if he could meet them both out there, he could get more information about the piebalds and what he's really up to and what's going on. And so he's sort of continuing to believe that Civil is in on this despite having no proof of that. In fact, evidence against it.
Best link to the piebalds, though.
That's
right?
true.
Like his task was to ferret out what the piebalds were doing, and he doesn't have any clue. So Civil is his closest link.
But this is what I mean. Like, he doesn't just drop it. And I mean, not that he should fully drop the Civil aspect of things, right? He is a suspicious person in the fact of all the facts that we know as Fitz. However, I don't think he should put all his eggs in the basket of Civil being a good link and not focus on anything else. it's kind of annoying and it frustrates me, but whatever. Night Eyes isn't there to point out that that's not happening, and he's also not there to verify whether or not the cat is around.
Right.
So
Yeah.
with Night Eyes, he could know that and then be able to switch gears easier.
Fitz doesn't have long to ponder that because he has to do his own duties. You know, he has to grab the horses for Lord Golden himself and look around at the other horses as well just to see what's going on. And he notes that one mare was so richly caparisoned that she must be awaiting the queen herself. I recognized Chade's horse as well. In addition to the prince's horse, there were 3 other richly decked mounts, so it seemed that Ark and Bloodblade and Uncle Peter would be part of the gathering too. And so there is a burst of conversation and laughter near the door, and the prince was dazzlingly attired in buckkeep blue, trimmed with the white fox of his mother's colors, and the queen had chosen blue and white as well, accented with goldenrod stripes on her mantle. Yet despite the brightness of the colors that echoed so well the blue and white of the winter day, the lines of her garb were simple in contrast to the extravagant clothing of her court. Chade was also there, and the prince is up there smiling, and everything seems so joyous and everything, but obviously Fitz can see it's a little bit strained, the prince's smile, and even though the young nobles kind of greet the prince and gesture him down, he stays next to his mother and Chade.
Yes. So clearly he is not as happy and excited as he
Right.
seems.
He greets Sybil first with a nod, and then also greets Lady Vance with a nod, the same, distance.
He greets Lady first. I think Lady Vance first. Lady Vance stood smiling up and for a moment caught his eyes. He nodded courteously, but then his gaze wandered to Sybil. The nod he gave him was equal to the first.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, so Lady Vance expected like a much larger greeting, obviously, and was greeted just as another friend. And just as an equal of the lower nobles there. But again, stays next to Chade and his mother. Other Out Islander merchants and merchant nobles, as Fitz describes them, appears with Ark and Bloodblade. And they all kind of gather around. They're wearing lace and ribbons and adopted the most extravagant fashions of Buckkeep, so they've kind of assimilated a little bit here. Kettricken, Chade, and Dutiful greeted them effusively. Pleasantries were exchanged, comments on the fine weather, compliments on clothing, and other civilities were bandied about as all awaited the Narcheska and Peter. And we all waited. So they were waiting a long time here, and Fitz says that it's a ruse to kind of set them all on edge. Kettricken's eyes kept darting to the door. Dutiful's laughter at Chade's pleasantries sounded forced. Arkin scowled and spoke gruffly to a man at his side. And the delay was long enough that the thought came to all of us that this was how they were going to return that humiliation that Dutiful put on Elliania and just not show up. And Kettricken was really close to sending somebody when the doors open and Peter appears. He had reverted completely to his native garb. Yet the effect was not that of barbarism, but of purity. His trousers were leather, his cloak of rich fur. His jewelry was ivory and gold and jade. The simplicity of line suggested he would be ready to ride, hunt, travel, or fight, and not be encumbered by frippery. He emerged onto the steps above us and stood there as if he had taken the center of a stage. He did not look happy to be there, but determined. As he stood silently, his arms crossed on his chest, the entire gathering fell silent. All eyes are fixing on him, and when everyone falls silent and he sees everyone's eyes on him, he speaks out loud. The Narcheska desires me to make it known that ages are reckoned differently in the gods' runes. She fears an ignorance of this may have led people to misunderstand her status among our folk. She is not a child by our standards, nor even yours, I suspect. In our islands, where life is harsher than in your gentle, pleasant land, we think it is bad luck to count a child a member of the family during those first 12 months when tiny lives may so easily wither. Nor do we give a child a name until that first crucial year is past. By our God's rune reckoning, then, the Narcheska is only 11 years old, nearly 12. But by your reckoning, she is 12, verging on 13, nearly the same age as Prince Dutiful. And then the Narcheska appears, opening her own door and closing it behind her. So there's a couple things in there. One, very, very interesting that all the other merchant nobles adopted the Buckkeep clothing.
Yes.
They're kind of assimilating so closely. It's been months and they've had a lot of close relationships and a lot of trade already, which, great, but it's kind of crazy that they've all started adopting that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be part of the ploy to get the Farseers to and Buck to sort of lower their guard potentially.
Yeah, but they're not in on the ploy, right? Those people are actually just genuinely there to try to make merchant connections.
I guess that could be. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know what the deal is with that because clearly Arkin is also in on the danger to Elliania's mother house and has something to do with the Pale Woman. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And then the other thing is that verging on 13 is close to Dutiful's age, which, from adults, yes. But, isn't Dutiful 15?
That's what I wrote, too. She's almost 13. He's solidly 15. And, grand scheme, not that big of a difference, but neither is 3 years. 2 years versus 3 years, kind of the same amount of difference.
So we can do his age, actually, because Fitz says 15 years have passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since the end of Assassin's Quest. And he could be 14.
That's true.
If that's, truly the case, right? If we don't account for any time passing through this book or last book or anything like that. Because Kettricken got pregnant at the end of the last one.
Yes.
So it would be 14 in 3 months, and then another 4 months for this. He would be almost 15, I guess.
And she's
I thought he was 15.
I thought so too. I thought there was something about him being whatever. Maybe he is 14. Let's say he's 14, which then makes even less sense that he feels like she's a baby at 12.
Well, the rumor is she's 11 going on to 12, right? So that's
okay.
Yeah.
So then she's 12 going on to 13.
Right.
Oh, now she's a grown up. And that's also a problem I have with this is that this is taken as a very serious thing and everybody's like, oh my gosh, Elliania really proved her, she really owned up and showed that she's not a baby anymore. And I feel like there's nothing more babyish than a baby saying, actually, I'm almost 13.
Right.
Okay, baby.
I'm almost a teenager, actually.
Almost a teenager. Or if you're little me, you are a teenager technically.
Yeah, Emma has this thing where double digits is teenager.
I said this last episode at the end, I'm pretty sure. When I was a little kid, I got really mad at my cousins because when I turned 11, I said I'm a teenager, and everybody told me you're not a teenager till you're 13. But I said I'm double digits, so I'm a teenager.
And I disagree with her. That's tweens.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Eliania's almost a teen.
She's almost a teen, actually. And I think
she's a woman.
I think there's just something inherently funny to me personally in reading everyone take this as a whoa, she actually is older moment, because that is such a baby thing to do. That is such a little kid thing to do. Stomp your foot and say, no, I am a grown up. I am.
I definitely agree with you, except with the way that she does the rest of the scene, because she also pairs that, which, yes, is pretty childish, with then presenting herself as equal to the queen.
Yes, but I do also want to say that this 12-year-old saying, actually, I'm not 11, I'm 12, and I am a grown-up, isn't at all met with like and that would have been rocky, but the way she did it next, they're like, wow, that actually was a good clarification. She is 12. And then she continues and solidifies it as this big move she's doing. And I just can't take that seriously. I'm really sorry. I can't. I do still feel like an 11 and 12-year-old or 12-year-old, whether you're verging on 13 or not, there is gonna be a little bit of difference between a 14-year-old verging on 15. I just feel like, in my mind, when you're from 10 to 21, every year is such a big progression in becoming an adult version of yourself that
15 is so different than 13.
It is. Just where you're at mentally. 7 to 9, not as big of a difference to me as it is 12 to 14. There is a developmental difference. There is a life stage difference. Mm-hmm. And so it is I don't know. I get it. I get why he thinks she's a baby, because it would feel like that at 14, almost 15.
It's so funny too, coming from Ship of Magic, where Malta is almost 13. And then she's getting courted by the 20-year-old Rain.
Yeah, crazy, by the way.
They're all like, yeah, she's a woman now. And this also, Peter kind of implies, by your standards, 13 is like a woman.
Yeah, which also is crazy because I don't think that's true.
I feel like Robin Hobb must have been operating on that kind of generally well-known, oh, this is a thing that happened in the past, even though that's a fallacy of oh, people married young all the time and had kids young. That's not how that worked.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of infused her writing because that was a quote unquote true thing in the medieval history, which again, not really true.
Yeah. I don't know. I also don't love the whole this is now Trilogy 2 in the last 2 trilogies, where we have an almost 13-year-old trying to be seen as an adult and act as though.
I mean, okay,
very different situations.
Under duress, yes.
Yes. I'm not arguing that point, but I'm just saying I don't love the whole overarching, 13-year-olds can get married and they're way more mature than you think. Right. No, they're not. No, a 12-year-old is not mature. Sorry.
Yeah.
And Elliania is mature, and as we'll continue on, we'll get over this little part. But I do also want to point out that I do feel as though she is too mature. I think.
Yeah. I have this problem with Malta as well at the end of the trilogy.
Because I don't know the last time any of you guys have talked to a 12-year-old. I've talked to one fairly recently because I work with kids. They don't act like that.
Right. There's lots of trauma going on and responsibilities that are foisted upon these 2 kids, both Malta and Elliania, but still they're acting like they are themselves 15 to 16 with all of these responsibilities, right? Yeah. I could believe that. Malta, I believe, is that age in the first couple books, but after her revolution, her character development, she becomes so poised and responsible and everything, and that's not a 13-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with Elliania. There's not enough of that little
especially because we saw her 3 months ago and she was more childlike. She did have the little kid response to being told she's not good at a dance, and I'm not saying that at 13 or 12 or whatever you can't have moments where you are mature for your age. I think it's just that I feel as though it's unbelievably mature.
Yeah, maybe it's because we only see the mature moments of these characters, and that's the best read I can give. But I agree with you. It's just a little bit. It's a suspension of belief for this.
This is a fantasy book. It's fine. Yeah. But we are deep reading, and I will have critiques. And I do also want to point out that I do also think Dutiful is a little bit too mature, but he has a better balance of showing the little kid side peeking through. Like,
We
and
get his complaints to Fitz, right?
yeah,
Like we get all of his childish like reasonings about things and like, oh, but I couldn't stop, Civil being mean because that would make it worse. And I had to laugh
yeah,
because it
like
was
little
kind of
kid.
funny.
Yeah. So like, I guess maybe that's part of it, but I think my problem is that Fitz also gets to see the unguarded Eliania, and we don't get those little moments. Like, and
I
again,
think we get her a
yeah,
little bit more when she gets to her island, right? And her
yes.
mother's house. We get a little bit more of her being free and like the riding the horses and stuff.
Hmm.
But we'll have to be on the lookout if it's more childlike or more just I'm letting my burden go and I'm still a young woman in bloom at 18 years old going on 13.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I don't know. But anyway, that's just something that I noticed that is a little bit humorous, but also like a little bit of, I don't know, I think a recurring thing. And I also kind of feel like, why couldn't we just have had them be older? Why couldn't Fitz have waited 2 more years to come to Buck? You know what I mean? Like,
Right, yeah.
I don't know. Why couldn't Hap still be young? Hap could still be a younger age and be of the right time to go. I don't know. It just, that part I don't love as much because it feels like just age them up. Why are we talking about 13-year-olds getting married?
Well,
I don't know.
it couldn't be 2 years in the future because of what Eliania asks next. Good segue there, Emma.
Yes.
So Eliania comes out and says, yes, I am nearly the same age as Prince Dutiful. Ages are accounted differently in our land, as are our ranks. For although I was not named nor my days numbered until I was a year old, I was still the Narcheska. But Prince Dutiful, I understand, will not be a king, no, not even a king in waiting for his crown, until he is 17. This is correct? She asked this of Kettricken as if she were uncertain, standing above the queen at the top of the steps. My queen was unflustered as she looked up and replied, in this you are correct, Narcheska. My son will not be accounted ready for that title until he has reached his 17th year. I see. An interesting difference from the customs of my home. Perhaps in my land we believe more in the strength of the lineage, that a babe is already who she will be, and hence worthy of her title from her first breath, while you in your farmer's world wait to see if the line has bred true. I see. It cannot be construed as an insult, quite. With her foreign accent and her odd placement of words, it could have merely been an unfortunate phrasing of thought, but I was sure it was not. Just as I was sure that her quiet, clear words spoken to Peter as she descended the steps at his side were intended to be overheard. Perhaps, then, I should not wed him until we are sure the prince will truly become the king? Many a man hopes to ride a throne, but is tumbled from it before he ascends to it. Perhaps the actual marriage should be postponed until his own people judge him worthy. And obviously, Kettricken and Chade do not like that.
No.
But Dutiful can't control his face as well as Fitz can pick up on the little features of Kettricken and Chade, and Dutiful kind of flushes a bit at that as well.
Right, because that is embarrassing. And
Fitz thinks that she accomplished her humbling of Dutiful quite well, but was wrong that she would not continue.
yes. I also want to point out, like, Fitz says it couldn't be taken as an insult, that she just said, I guess in my land, we believe in our leaders. You have to make sure yours is a legitimate heir. That is so insulting. There is no, like, it's so odd to me to be like, and nobody thought that would have been an insult. Is this like a Fitz
He
doesn't
say
think
that exactly. He says it could not be construed as an insult quite, meaning that like you can take insults at it, but because of where it's coming from, you're like, it could definitely be meant as one, but very, very veiled. But most likely, it's just awkward phrasing. So like you're not gonna take offense at it, but
I guess
you
she's
can.
also
And
she's also 12, so
12. Yes, almost 13.
Almost 13. Guys, she's an adult. She's 13, basically. She's a teenager. She's 12.
She approaches her horse, and Dutiful approaches her to like help her on it, And she waves him away, saying, "Allow my uncle to help me. He is a man of experience with both horses and women. If I require assistance, I shall be safest in his hands." And then when her uncle steps forward, she waves him away with a smile and says, "I am not a child, you know." And then she mounts her own horse.
It's just like, okay, there are some things being artfully done here. I will agree. Like, I think she is doing a really good job of like returning the slight tenfold.
Right.
She's being petty, which is her right. And I think it's funny. I think it's good for Dutiful to see that his actions have consequences. However, it is still such like a childish little tantrum to me. Like, there are moments of maturity and levity, but like it is on underneath it all just a little kid being like, I'm a grown up. See, I'm a grown up. And that's all I see. And maybe it's just because I'm a grown up. I'm a real grown up. And so I'm like, dang, to be young again. But Fitz, at only a few years older than I am currently, is sort of like, she's doing a really good job of this. And that's kind of crazy to me.
She's astride her horse now and rides up next to Kettricken, and Fitz notices that they make quite a pair because they're both dressed very simply and yet richly at the same time. So it's a big contrast to the extravagant dress of everyone else. And somehow their clothing made it seem as if they not only belonged together, but also were the only two who shared a sensible attitude to a pleasure ride on a winter's day. Either of them, if faced with a lamed horse, could have easily hiked home through the snow. Without an obvious intent, they had made the coiffed and decorated nobles appear silly and frivolous. I wrinkled my brow at the thought that came to me. By complimenting Kettricken's simple attire, yet remaining true to the customs of her own folk, the Narcheska claimed an equal footing with our queen. And Dutiful is like looking back at his young nobles, but has to ride up to next to the Narcheska and be a third wheel to Kettricken and Elliania's conversation.
Yes. And beautifully, Kettricken does not do anything to help her son in this moment. Like, as they ride on, she and Elliania have a great old time just discussing and chatting, and Dutiful is made to sit there and feel like an outsider, where occasionally the Narcheska will talk to him, but only as though she's including a person who's on the outside so that they feel like they know what's going on.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even have a chance to really talk. He can only kind of nod along. And I think there's something really funny about the fact that Kettricken is part of this and is absolutely not stepping up for her son, being like, no, you deserve this. But also she probably has a little bit of kinship with Elliania in that way because she was treated similarly by her betrothed farseer husband when she first arrived at court as well. Although a little different because she was like 17, but you know, whatever.
Yeah. Well, Lord Golden rides with the young nobles, and Fitz makes note that while Lady Vance is kind of engaged with talking to everyone around, including Lord Golden, her eyes do stray to the prince. And like you mentioned before, it's unknown if how involved she actually is in this planning or if she was just a young woman caught up in everything.
Yes.
And Fitz says that I knew one disconcerting moment on this ride when Dutiful abruptly crashed through my barriers and into my thoughts. With the skill, this is all italicized. I don't deserve this. It was an accidental remark, but she behaves as if I deliberately humiliated her. I almost wish I had. The jolt of his thought was shock enough, but worse was to see Lord Golden flinch to it. He glanced back at me, one brow raised, almost as if he thought I had spoken to him. Nor was he alone, though his reaction was the most extreme. Several other riders in our party abruptly glanced off in different directions, as if they had heard a distant shout. So Fitz narrows this skill back to Dutiful and says, like, calm yourself. When you are skilling emotionally, you have no control. Refrain from doing so ever in the future. Also, Elliania has no way to know that you did not deliberately humiliate her, and she is not the only one who may believe that of you. Consider the attitudes of the young women who ride with Civil. But for now, ponder this to yourself. Refrain from skilling. And the prince lowers his head at Fitz's stern reprimand. I saw him draw a long breath, squares his shoulders, and then sits straighter up in his saddle. He glanced about as if trying to enjoy the ride.
And then Fitz feels bad, so he sends another message saying, I know you don't deserve this, but sometimes a prince, or any man, must endure what he did not deserve, just as Elliania did last night. School yourself to patience and submit to it. And so Fitz is trying to teach him a lesson here, which is that it doesn't really matter what your intention was. It matters how the person received it. And
Yeah.
like,
and even if the reaction is overblown to how it came off to you,
yeah,
that doesn't quite matter.
right.
So just
and
bear with it.
yeah, like, hey, this is unfair. However, you were a jerk. So, and I think also very importantly, he points out that like, just because he believes that he didn't do anything on purpose, which questionable, but just because he believes that doesn't mean that other people also believe it, including Elliania, which I thought
Right.
also was a good lesson of like, hey, think about how this could look. Even if you believe that you did nothing wrong, think about how it might not look like that to other people and how that makes them act. Especially this girl of yours. It's not like other girls.
Yeah. And her friends.
Yeah.
That see that too. So at the end of the ride, Fitz notes that there is a look of relief in Dutiful's eyes, thinking like, oh, I've atoned for my sins. It's over. I'm done. All will return to what it was before. And Fitz in his mind is like, I could have told him that is never so. And then we get a story about, like, there's a page break. We get a story about him, and eventually he confronts Jinna in this as well. And
yes.
that just kind of, oh, Fitz, it rings so true, but also at the same time, you never tried to atone for any of your.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, that's the other thing, right? Is that Fitz, he's doing a good job of like sort of trying to.
He knows the lessons. He just doesn't always. It's, do what I say, not as I do.
And I think Jenna had a good line a few chapters ago where like you tell your kids things because they're not old enough to have life experience, and like you have to guide them through things they don't know. When you're an adult, you know the risks of what you do and you make choices based on that. Like,
right.
And I think that's a good point too with Fitz, where like he's teaching his kids the right way to handle things and like what to do. He's not emulating that, but he is an adult making the choices not to do that. And so it is different, I guess.
As I said, there's a page break here, and it's after the ride, and Fitz kind of talks about the afternoon, how there's news that two ships are flooding in from the south, from like the Bing Town area, and Lord Golden is very happy at that. They're talking about how there is entertainment planned for the afternoon. It's not a puppet show, but it's actors playing out a thing, and Fitz is like, this could never go well.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that. I know this is like a small thing and not super important, but I did want to bring it up. So Fitz says there was an entertainment planned for the afternoon, a play acted out by costumed individuals in the Jamalian fashion rather than using puppets. I did not see how it could be done effectively, but Lord Golden had assured me that he had seen many such plays in the southern cities, and many clever things could be done to distract the watchers from the flaws. He had seemed quite pleased at the prospect of this diversion, and even more pleased at the arrival of the ships bringing the actors. I thought puppets was the Bing Town way, because isn't there a whole thing about how Malta wants to go to a party where her friends are hosting puppeteers from Jamalia?
Sure, but Jamalia is always on the
up and up.
The up and up, yeah, the front
that
of
was
the
a
culture.
decade ago.
Yeah,
that was like 6 years.
Bingtown
ago.
is backwater. Remember?
That's true. I don't know, but it just made me think. I was like, we did not hear about plays. We heard about puppet shows there, and I guess we've heard about puppet shows in Bingtown as well. But also, Fitz talks about how he has trouble following the plot because there's a actor that plays an acolyte in the beginning scene, and then later he's like a monk or something in a different scene, and he just can't believe how one person could try to pretend to be two different people. And it's kind of funny just because it's such a weird thing to get caught up on.
Yeah, I mean, like, So he talks about how he's used to the puppets having no life of their own. So it's
Yeah.
just like, this is their character, right? And this is who you recognize as that character through the whole thing. And Fitz, who is trained, literally trained to recognize people from facial features, but also just like how they act and stand, is like, this is the same person. It's not a different character. What are you talking about?
His imagination has been killed by assassination training. And
but also, he talks about how it's a Jamalian plot and how everything is going wrong, and then the two-faced deity comes in at the end
and saves the
and
day.
saves the day. So Sa comes in.
Yeah, which is really funny, but
Not
also
dual-faced.
Yeah,
Two-faced has a
different connotation.
Yep.
The dual-faced deity. No, but I also found that to be interesting. It did also make me wonder. I mean, I guess I didn't think about the whole like assassin training, but I was wondering if maybe witted people would have more trouble with plays being entertaining.
Because you can like identify
Yeah.
their life force as well.
Yeah, so like the people. But I don't know. I guess I don't know that Fitz thinks that people have unique senses of life, or just that he senses life.
I think so, that they would have unique signatures because, well, maybe not.
No, it's just their scent would be unique to them.
Yeah.
But
either
that
way,
he probably isn't know. But yeah, but I like, so it just made me have a whole thought about like the witted community hates plays because because it's weird. They have to do the puppets. I don't know. Very interesting though, and it does make me wonder if that's ever been a problem in real life for people who had never seen plays before.
Fitz also mentions that it's more befuddling than amusing, like you mentioned before, because of all of those reasons we stated, but also because the prince is exuding misery, basically. He's not deliberately skilling it, but it's just kind of seeping out of him and hitting everywhere at the same time. He's alone and miserable in his social discomfort. In the last month or so, the renewed gaiety of Buckkeep Castle had exposed him to many folk his own age, which, again, that is, as we talked about in the first book, very, very important to him. He has been very isolated.
Yes.
And that's also why he's very upset with Nettle not being there to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hey, you took away somebody my own age that is a family member that I could just be a friend with. And so with all of this social activity around the Narcheska coming, a lot of these young nobles are coming in to spend their time around Buckkeep. So he's been exposed and made a lot of new friends and had a lot of things to do. So through Civil, he's begun to explore camaraderie and all those things. And now it's kind of
shut down again.
Shut down because he has to be more reserved about this betrothal and be more respectful of it.
Right. But also, I don't understand the idea that it's just been a month of him finally getting the experiences of having young people around, because what on earth were Chade and Kettricken doing then? Like, why wouldn't nobles jump at any chance to come to Buckkeep and be around the prince that is their children's ages?
Well, it's because, so he talked about this, right? Dutiful did, that Chade and Kettricken both schooled him that, like, hey, you cannot get too close to these people. And like there is a balance of like people are going to ask you things of you, and you have to say no, and like you cannot get too close to. They would like restrict his time with young women they can't get close to, and all this thing. So now I think because the betrothal is out there, Kettricken and Chade are being like, yeah, like these are going to be your subjects, mingle with them because you are taken now.
Yeah, but like people can still ask things of him.
Sure,
it's not like that danger goes away. So that doesn't make sense to me, I guess, is what I'm saying. I feel like this chapter is just Emma's confused about the logic, but whatever. So anyway, I guess I just have confusion about that. But I also do want to back up because, like you said, there was news of Bingtown that came in with the play, the playwrights or whatever, the people that came to do the play.
Actors, yeah.
And Fitz talks about how Lord Golden is excited to know that Bingtown is beating back Chalced a little bit, which is big. They're starting to win the war that is still ongoing. And he also mentions that Lord Golden often gets large stacks of letters from Bingtown.
From the ships that do evade the patrols, yeah.
Yes, and that he often takes them to his own chambers immediately and then never brings them up. And Fitz talks about how he's really curious about it because he doesn't think it's just about his mysterious money holdings and apricot brandy deals. He thinks it's also something deeper, but he doesn't want to talk to the fool about it because he feels like if he even asks one question, the fool will just immediately cut off all access to his knowledge of the letters being given to
Evincing
him.
curiosity on any topic had always been the swiftest way to make the fool cut off the flow of information. Yeah.
And I felt like that was really interesting because I don't know if that would still be true. Maybe it is. Maybe it's true that he would, but it makes me sad that Fitz can't even ask his friend questions. And whether or not that's a real danger of Beloved shutting him out and being like, no, or a made up one from previous experiences, it's still kind of like sad and frustrating that he can't ask his friend to open up.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, back to Dutiful's problem, which is that he is basically in a bind because he has to but he has to go back to sort of being proper about his friendships with all the other nobles. And also, he now has to double down and make it seem as though
the betrothal was his choice and he's happy by it rather than just being bound by it.
Exactly.
But later that evening, Lord Golden lets Fitz have some time of his own. So he goes down to Buckkeep Town and the Stuck Pig. In light of what I had witnessed at the keep, I was disposed to be more tolerant of Hap's wayward courtship. Perhaps, I reflected as I strode through falling snow on my way to town, it struck some greater balance in the wide world that Hap could freely indulge in what was completely denied to the prince.
I just put in all caps, why?
He feels bad for the prince and is like, well, I guess Hap has freedom.
A completely other person that has nothing to do with a completely different personality. I guess I should let him do whatever he wants because I can't let the other kid. No. Whatever. I don't like the decision that he has come to.
But the Stuck Pig is, well, he never really acts on it either.
Well, he can't because Hap takes it too far immediately, which is because of Fitz's lack of doing anything, which we'll get to, yeah. It's very funny to me that Fitz is saying, like, I've come to the decision that Hap can do whatever he wants, as though that hasn't been how he's been allowing Hap to act this entire time. Yeah. Now I know. I'll just let him have his little fun. Okay, and that's different to what you've been doing, Hal. What does that look like now? The same thing? Interesting. So he goes down to the Stuck Pig to try to find them, which we're just glazing over the fact that last time he was here to the reader, we were told that this is potentially where a bunch of piebalds hang out. Witted people hang out. And going straight back into, this is just where he's trying to meet his boy. And Hap is not there, and neither is Svanja, even though it's kind of late. And so Fitz is kind of excited because maybe that means that he chose to take his studies more seriously and that he's not here because he is where he's supposed to be, which is nice, very wishful thinking.
Yeah. But then somebody walks into the Stuck Pig and is very angry and looking around, sees Fitz or Tom Badgerlock and talks again to the innkeeper very angrily. And the innkeeper's just like, no, don't talk to me, talk to him. So this man goes over, clenching his fists, and says, where are they? Who? I asked, but with a sinking heart I knew to whom he referred. Svanja had her father's brow. You know who. The keeper says you've met them here before. My daughter Svanja and that demon-eyed country whelp who has lured her away from her master's hearth. From her parents' hearth. Your son is what the keeper says. Master Hartshorn made the words an accusation. He has a name. Hap. And yes, he is my son. I was instantly angry, but it was a cold anger, clear as ice. I shifted my weight very slightly, clearing my hip. If he came across the table at me, my knife would meet him. Your son. He spoke the word with contempt. I'd be ashamed to admit it. Where are they? I suddenly heard the desperation as well as the fury in his voice. So, Svanja wasn't at home, and neither she nor Hap was here. Where could they be on a snowy, dark night like this? Little question of what they were doing. My heart sank, but I spoke quietly. I don't know where they are, but I feel no shame to claim Hap as my son, nor do I think he lured your daughter into anything. If anything, it is the reverse, with your Svanja teaching my son town ways. How dare you, he roared and drew back a meaty fist. Lower your voice and your hand, I suggested icily. The first to spare your daughter's reputation, the second to spare your life.
So cool.
And my posture drew his eyes to my ugly sword at my hip. His anger did not die, but I saw it tempered with caution. And Fitz invites him to sit down, as much a command as suggestion. Take control of yourself, and let us speak of what concerns us both as fathers. So there's like an uneasy truce there. Everyone's kind of looking at them in the bar, but they sit down. A serving boy brings a mug of ale to Svanja's father, who does not drink at all during this time, but they start talking a little bit more.
Do you think he ever lowers his meaty fist?
No,
it's definitely
keeps
his fist raised by his head.
It's definitely raised and cocked back, ready to punch the whole time.
Because we get mention of him raising his fist, but we don't ever get mention of him dropping it.
Fitz is asking here, do you completely oppose Hap, courting your daughter? And the father's like, oppose? Of course I do. He has not even had the courage to come to me, to say his name to me, and declare his intent. And even if he did, I would oppose it. He tells her he is an apprentice. Well, then why does he not live at his master's house, if that is true? And if it is true, what is he thinking to court a woman before he can even make his own living? He has no right. He is completely unsuitable for Svanja. So Fitz is like, okay, nothing Hap is going to do is going to redeem him in her father's eyes.
At this moment, there's no quick way, but if he would go back to his apprenticeship, focus, and come back with a real offer, I think he could mend things.
Maybe, but I feel like the anger with which the father is talking, I feel like there'd always be some resentment and anger there and everything. So I don't know. Either way, Fitz is like, there might be some place I know where they could be. That's the only other place. It's a short walk to Jenna's place. I don't want to go, but
we'll go. But I do think, so this whole thing is really interesting, right? Because Fitz is like, I can't believe he's blaming my boy when it was clearly his daughter that did this. I think it was both of them. I think they're both being kids in love, This is
right.
Not necessarily one or the other, but Fitz equally is fully blaming Svanja as her father is fully blaming Hap.
Right.
And it's odd to me that Fitz doesn't really have a reaction to finding out that Hap never tried to ask permission to court this girl when he didn't know that. Like, Hap made it seem as though everything was on the up and up, and he doesn't know why her parents don't like him. And now he finds out it's because he's been sneaking the daughter off without talking to the father at all, and he's not trying to. And maybe it's because Fitz has so little experience with courting rules and actually going by the book. And whenever he was around Hap's age, he and Molly went out without telling Molly's father all the time. That was also a very different situation because her father wasn't around. So, and when he was, you wouldn't want to be near him. So, like, I don't know. It's hard to tell why Fitz exactly is kind of not shocked and appalled by hearing this behavior.
Right.
He also doesn't feel any sort of way that we get to know about the father pointing out that he's not living with the apprentice house and like how that looks shady.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because he already knows about that one and he's like, whatever, it's not that big a deal.
Conversations.
But either way, you'd think this would just be another thing of like, hey, I should make him live at the apprenticeship house, which I do think happens, right? No, he never forces him to.
I don't think
Crazy.
So.
Well,
maybe he does, but I don't think he does. Or maybe he does after Fitz kills those guys and Jenna doesn't want anything to do with him. I don't remember.
Okay, well, either way,
we'll have to get
Fitz
there.
has very little reaction to finding out that his son is not that good of a kid compared to, like, this isn't the Hap that he raised, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, he can blame Svanja. They walk to Jinna's house and knock on the door after saying, it's Tom Badgerlock and Svanja's father looking for Hap and Svanja. And Fitz notes that Jinna mostly talks to Mr. Hartshorn.
And she only opens the top half of the door.
Yep, saying, they're not here, nor have I ever permitted them to spend time in each other's company here, though there's little I can do to stop Svanja from knocking at my door and asking for Hap. She swings her gaze to Fitz and says, I haven't seen Hap at all this evening. She crossed her arms on her chest. She didn't need to say she had warned me it would come to this. The flat accusation was there in her eyes. I suddenly could not meet her stare. I'd avoided seeing her since the night she had glimpsed Laurel in my arms. That I had never offered her the courtesy of an explanation shamed me. It was an act both cowardly and juvenile. I'd best go look for him, then, I muttered, suddenly abashed before her. I felt ashamed for my own behavior as my son's. I'd hurt Jinna, and tonight I suddenly faced that. The truth speared me. It hadn't been for any lofty moral reasons. It had been because I was afraid, because I had known she would become a facet of my life that I could not control, just as Hap was now. Damn him for ruining my girl, Hartshorn suddenly raged, and he turns and stumbles off. You keep him away from her. You keep your demon-blasted son away from my Svanja. And he leaves.
Yes. Before we continue on, I do want to say, I feel like this is, again, another point that I wanted to point out of Fitz's weird switch-up attitude, where whenever the Laurel situation was actively happening and the weeks that followed, he was very adamant of he didn't owe Jinna an explanation at all, and like there's nothing wrong with what he was doing, whatever. Like clearly it felt very teenage boy who got caught doing something.
I disagree with that, actually.
Okay.
I think it was pretty clear in that he wanted to tell Jinna about what was going on. Didn't know how, but he wanted to say something, but could not leave Laurel there. Now, the weeks after, we didn't get any dwelling on that thought, and he just ignored the problem completely, which is teenage boy and juvenile to ignore that problem, right?
Well, he specifically said that he didn't owe her an explanation, that he couldn't think of a good enough lie to tell her, so there was no point in going to talk to her at all after the Laurel situation had passed. Like, he said those things. That's not a, I feel bad about what I'm doing. That's a, I don't have to. And so like in my mind, that's where I'm getting the like, and now it would be like, wow, I hurt her. I feel so bad. Feels crazy because he knew the whole time that he hurt her feelings. But before it didn't matter because she didn't deserve to know anything. And now he's come to the realization that actually, because he's seen her hurt in front of him, actually it is kind of bad that he did that. And that was bad behavior. And so I just feel like that's like kind of a weird switch up to me.
There's also the thing that he says where it's, it had been because I was afraid, because I had known she would become a facet of my life that I could not control, just as Hap was now. And that's also something we've talked about before, where any kind of meaningful connection where someone is involved with his life, he has to compartmentalize. And we talked about this with the Molly thing too, right? Hiding all this information. And like he's so secretive about things and has to be for some of it, but is purposefully so secretive about other things that it ruins any kind of relationships that he can have because his mind cannot, I don't know, put those two things together and make them live harmoniously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's now standing at Jinna's doorstep with her right there and says, Jinna, I need to find Hap tonight, but I think, well, we both know you won't find him, or Svanja. I doubt they want to be found this night. She paused, but before I could even draw breath, she said evenly, and I think Rory Hartshorn is right. You should keep Hap away from Svanja, for all our sakes. But how you're going to do it, I don't know. Better you had never let your son run wild like this, Tom Badgerlock. I hope it isn't too late for him. He's a good boy, I heard myself say. It sounded feeble, the excuse of a man who had neglected his son. He is. That is why he deserves better from you. Good night, Tom Batcherlock. And she shuts the door. Fennel comes up a little bit later saying, open the door. The cat wants in. And Fitz just has to say, well, that door doesn't open for me anymore. And Fennel's like, oh, you're a dumb human. You just have to do this, and scratches at the door. And as Fitz walks away, hears the door open, and Fennel is let in. And he's moping, as you said before, kind of going to this like, oh, poor me. He's like, I walked back up to Buckkeep Castle envying a cat.
Noticeably, he doesn't try again. He doesn't start with an apology. It was all about Hap. And I know that,
Right.
Obviously that is happening right in this moment, but also he could have taken 2 seconds to be like, hey, I'm really sorry for what happened. What you saw, there is a fully normal explanation, but right now my focus is on Hap. I need to go do that. He could have started there, whatever. He could have tried knocking on the door again,
Yeah.
He just gave up. And I think that's very Fitz. And I'm not saying that, if somebody says no, that means convince them. I'm saying that, this is a very tumultuous relationship and there's a misunderstanding happening, and Fitz knows that. And he could have knocked on the door again just to be like, hey, your cat wants in, and also I'm really sorry. That could have been the perfect opening.
Yeah.
And instead, he has taken this as, I've lost Jenna forever. I'm envious of the cat. And 2 chapters ago, he's talking about how he can't believe he keeps going back to Jenna's place. He wishes he didn't have to keep sleeping with her. I don't know. Make up your mind, dude.
Well, that's that chapter. That's the full thing right there. Resolutions. So I guess the dutiful thing got resolved-ish. And the Jenna storyline in Fitz's mind is fully wrapped up as well. It's over. Never get along again. That door is fully closed to him.
It could also be the resolution of, I have to make things better.
Yeah.
Or I have to endure this as punishment for what I've done to a woman for both Fitz and Dutiful.
Yeah, definitely. If you have thoughts on the chapter, please let us know. It is fitzhappy@gmail.com. Or you can message us directly or comment on our posts on any of our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Reddit. Feel free to write in.
Now it's time to talk about our favorite part, which is what you guys have brought to our attention.
But of course, before we do, I want to give a big shout out to the listeners who support us on Ko-fi. First off, we have Neva, Anna, Degenhard, Zakita, and Simon. Thank you so much for the repeated support there.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it. And to start off the conversation, we have a message from Audrey, who is writing in to talk about how they would also love to see Fitz in therapy. This is about the episode 296, and talking about how they also believe that his attitude towards Nettle is frustrating during this trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Fully agrees with you that it's bad parenting to not allow Nettle to come to Buckkeep to be taught safe skilling, because it's extremely dangerous to let her explore it on her own.
And they say, I believe she could be brought to court without divulging her lineage, if Björk agrees, but he would if the queen commanded it, to be taught. But then Fitz would have to teach his 2 biological children while hiding his identity / their biological link, and maybe it's too much to ask of him, and I kind of understand that. And I think that's an aspect that we didn't touch on a lot, too, is that there are ways for Nettle to come to court and not be told the truth. She does not have to know who Fitz is or what their actual link is. He could just be a cousin. He could be Chade's kid. He could take on both Dutiful and Nettle. He could be Chade and Lady Time's son. And that is also, though, a lot to ask of him, to have to once again hide his identity and lie to people that he cares about. So I do also understand and give him grace for the fact that, like, yeah, I wouldn't want to hide that either. However, if it's his daughter dying skilling or getting to know that he's her real father biologically, I feel like you should probably pick making sure your daughter doesn't die from skilling and then worry about who you are later.
Audrey finishes saying, sadly, I don't think Fitz is happy this chapter.
Yeah. And then also, Audrey talks about how they also can't stand when Fitz decides what's best without consulting the people involved. Plus, it's very paradoxical that someone who thinks seemingly so little of himself has enough ego to believe he knows what's best for others. I think that makes him very interesting and real, but also frustrating.
100%. 100%
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, it is a paradox, right? Because he doesn't think he's worthy of being around these people, but also he's worthy of choosing their life paths for them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So thank you, Audrey, for writing in.
Also want to shout out Iggy, who sent us a message on Instagram as well, sending us a clip of The Simpsons saying this is Fitz saving Dutiful from the Skill River, and it's of Ned Flanders saving Homer from his burning house, but like Homer just keeps going back in the house as he's
Yes.
unconscious, making it very difficult
Yes.
for Flanders. So yeah, very apt. Thank you.
Great. I have not seen that clip before because I was not a Simpsons kid, so thank you. I enjoyed that. We also got a couple emails.
Yeah, the first one was from Allie on episodes 295 and 296. Allie has a few things to go over here, kind of broken up into sections. And the first one is about when Fitz saved Dutiful from the Skill River. We talked about that quote at the end, and maybe it's from Chivalry. And then we decided, maybe it's not Chivalry because his skill was the opposite. So maybe it was Verity. At least I posited that.
Yeah.
And Allie says, I have a theory of how Verity can be in the Skill River. From what I understand, going into a skill pillar is physically going into the skill river, and I think going into a memory stone dragon is like that. So when the dragons are sleeping, they are just in the skill river. When the dragons wake up, they are made aware of the real world. This would explain how Fitz is able to talk to Verity in the final trilogy as well. And I do like that. I feel like we've discussed the possibility and maybe some headcanons that the stone dragons are separate from the skill river as well.
Yes.
There's just like not a lot of information to go off of. So, but this also makes sense with what Ali is saying here. I do like that too.
Yeah. And I mean, I would also, I like Allie's idea. I would also say that technically Verity did dunk his arms into physical skill multiple times.
Yeah.
And so there is a potential that like the parts of him that are in the skill river are literally parts of him and not things that couldn't be added into the dragon because of his dipping. I don't know that for certain, and that's another tangent theory because of what you've put forward. But I do also like the idea that when the dragons are sleeping, they are sort of the beings in them are in the skill river, because I think it also goes to the point that it is really hard to wake up these skill dragons. You can't just use skill. You can't just wake them up easily. You do have to sort of remind them of the physical world and now, and use wit and
blood
and
with
blood.
Hunger. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that part, it does make sense, and I do like it.
Ali also goes on to talk a little bit more about Verity and commenting on our conversation about parentage, of how, you know, obviously the Fool and Fitz are two fathers to be because their kind of essences mingled. But we discussed the fact that maybe Dutiful has Verity and Fitz in him because of that kind of same thing. And Allie doesn't really agree, thinking that the essences and the beings of those two people didn't mix in the same way.
Right, because with Fitz, I guess Dutiful, Fitz and Verity were both physically there, right? Like Fitz in
Right.
body, Verity in spirit. Whereas with B, it is just Fitz.
Hmm.
Beloved is not aware of this at all.
Yeah.
So that is a good point too, I guess. Although it could be a both and to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a good point that
Hmm.
this is a little bit different than what happens with B and her creation. And then also, Ali points out that the fact that Chade is using herbs from the higher shelf is a sign that the tea he is taking to strengthen his skill might be dangerous to him in other ways. I think this is an extension of him being unable to see the skill as a danger to himself.
And I definitely agree with that. I think that's kind of what, even though Fitz was reminiscing on like, oh, he still sees himself and me as 20 years ago as we were, I feel like that's kind of the inference that Fitz was missing, that these are still dangerous herbs. It's
Yeah.
not that Fitz couldn't get to them, it's just that these are the dangerous ones. And he
Uh-huh.
kind of glazes past that a little bit.
Yeah, because it's easy to think if Chade is ingesting them, they can't be dangerous. Why would he do that? Why would he risk himself in that way?
Right. But it just shows like an established pattern, and we'll see that repeatedly, that Chade doesn't care for himself incredibly well, and he's more willing to take on those risks in pursuit of the skill and knowledge.
It is another paradoxical trait, though, right? That like Fitz is a paradox sometimes, but so is Chade, because Chade has so much pride in the work that he does and what he brings to the Farseer throne, and yet does not have any self-preservation. He does not make sure that he can last longer in the traditional sense. He's always pushing
Yeah.
the bounds in dangerous ways that could result in very bad disasters for himself and others.
And in the last trilogy as well, that comes to fruition. He, I think, takes a bad fall, and he has put a skill lock on his mind that needs a
Yes.
password. And they eventually figure out the answer to the riddle, but he locks himself because like, I need to lock myself because I have so many good secrets, but also
Yes.
I'm not just going to write down my password or tell you the secret because that's dangerous too. And Fitz is
Yeah.
like, but this could happen again and we need to heal you. And he's like, well, not going to do it.
Yeah, it is a big paradox in that way, and maybe that's just the complexity of man, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. So good call there that those tea herbs Chade is drinking is also danger.
And Allie also wants to comment a little bit about the relationship that Fitz has with Starling versus the relationship that Fitz has with Jinna, and says that there's a difference because Fitz actually cares for Starling and there was a bond forged through what they went together. And with Jinna, it's just that she was there and she liked him and he was kind of insecure in himself at the time. So there's not as much, I don't know, as much emotion or feeling there. And that's why he's more hung up on the Starling thing than anything that happens with Jinna, which is a very interesting suggestion as well.
Yeah, especially because Fitz himself tries to sort of act as though there isn't a ton of feelings for Starling.
He's still hurt by everything that she said. I mean,
Yes.
they've known each other for 15 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a long relationship.
Yes. And then also points out that Hap is with a girl who he just met and is prioritizing her over his work. And while the situations don't perfectly align, since Fitz is not prioritizing Jinna, he probably doesn't want to endorse what Hap is doing. It seems like at the moment, Fitz is really insecure in himself, and a part of that is insecure in how he raised Hap to be just like him. It makes me think of when Burek told a younger Fitz that he wanted to raise Fitz to be better than him, but Fitz kept making the same mistakes.
Right.
And I think that's also a really good point, is that a lot of the struggle with Hap and what he's doing and how Fitz's own actions could be playing a part into what Hap is choosing to do is probably stemming from the fact that he doesn't want Hap to turn out like him. And
Yeah.
unfortunately or unfortunately, Hap is following in his father's footsteps and making a lot of the same mistakes. And finally, Allie talks about how Fitz doesn't mention the Fool in this chapter really about his everyday life, and this furthers the disconnection Beloved felt in the earlier chapters and might be something to look at as we get closer to their fight.
And yeah, that is something kind of we've mentioned, but it's a good point out specifically for this chapter that just doesn't make an appearance.
Yeah, and even when Beloved is there is that sort of, like you mentioned in this chapter, it's Lord Golden. That's not Beloved.
Yeah.
I'm not telling everything. I'm not.
And once in
choosing
a
to spend
while,
time.
the Fool peeks through, but it's mostly Lord Golden.
Yeah, there's definitely some distancing happening on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, more evident in how Lord Golden is being described more from that perspective, but I think it's easier to overlook on Fitz's side because he is so private about things that it is, and Beloved hasn't been there for so long that it makes sense that like he's not as concerned, but it also kind of doesn't when you really think about it. Like, why aren't we talking to Lord Golden? Why aren't we having more conversations with our best friend? That'd probably be good.
Thank you, Allie.
Yeah, thanks, Allie.
We appreciate your thoughts. Last but not least, we had an email from Catherine. And this is on the theory about Beloved being intersex, which is also very interesting.
Yeah. And they said being intersex can show up in loads of different ways. It's just all the ways that there can be variations in sex organs and other biological markers. In the first trilogy, there was Starling's insistence that Fool was a woman, which perhaps speaks to a mix of biological markers and how they're perceived. And then generally speaking, the fact that Amber is evidently convincing as a woman.
And then goes on to talk about how in Live Ship Traders, Amber gives Althea really good advice about how to pretend to be a man and follows a lot of the same advice throughout their life and how they're described from Fitz's point of view.
Yeah, so
particularly being fastidious and very clean.
Yes. A fastidious personality, so it's not seen as weird for her to be keeping extra clean or washing more when attending to periods, and also keep herself as private as possible. Just like Beloved is whenever he is, the Fool is when he is around the castle and around Fitz's first trilogy. He likes his own private space, and he's extra cleanly and has a thing about dirt.
And then Catherine goes on to say, and this is something that I kind of forgot about, but in the final trilogy, when Fitz stabs Fool and brings him to Buckkeep, there is a moment when I think Kettricken is attending to Fool's wounds, but when it comes to removing his loincloth, he is absolutely adamant it remains on, and I think Fitz makes a comment about Fool needing to keep his secrets or something like that. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting detail to be included. Why would Fool in a basically near-death state care so much about being naked? Anyway, I love the Beloved's character reads as queer in a lot of ways, and I've not seen anyone suggest that they are intersex, so thought I'd put it out there as a theory. And then also makes a comment about how when B is at Claris, she remarks that she can't tell a lot of the younger servants' genders. And this obviously doesn't mean that someone is intersex. It just means that maybe some of that genetics is, and those markers, the biological markers, are confusing for those genetics, the white genetics.
Yeah. So I definitely think that's an interesting take as well. That potentially, and I guess we never really get to know, right? That is something that Beloved is very blasé about and is very private about.
Right.
And they're
like they say, it's just plumbing.
Yeah. Which is really funny. I mean, I don't know. It does make me think of, I have a friend who's non-binary, and they always say that they are whatever gender is funniest in the moment. And that is so hilarious to me. Like every time I'm around them, I'm like, you are amazing for that. But I guess I've always thought of Beloved more as like non-binary, but I think it is interesting to also bring in that potentially there is the fact that Beloved is intersex. Maybe that is a thing that is happening as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
Be read in a lot of different ways.
Could be.
I love hearing all the different ways as well.
Yes, and I love hearing all the theories. It's very fun to get to talk about these characters in that way. And what a crazy thing that Beloved isn't real, and Fitz isn't real, and Kettricken isn't real, but
they're real to me.
They are real to all of us, and can be read in so many different ways, and so many different people can have connections to them or see things that are real in different ways to themselves.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
So thank you, Catherine, and thank you to everybody else who writes in and gives us your wonderful theories and thoughts. And we look forward to hearing from you next week.